What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Busy Dad's Board Gaming. My name is Neil Odette, and today I'm going to teach you the 2 to 5 player game Paper Tales, designed by Masato Uesugi and published by Stronghold Games, who was actually kind enough to provide me with a copy of the game. So let's dive right in and learn how to play. To set up, place the score track in the center of the table within reach of all the players. Set the time token on the first space of the turn track. Form 2 pools with gold and a pool of age tokens and give each player 3 gold. Each player then chooses a color and takes the corresponding player aid and score token. Score tokens are then placed on the score track on the 0 space. Players each take a set of 5 different building cards that can be built throughout the game: the mine, the temple, the tavern, the town, and the barracks. Shuffle all the unit cards and place them face down in a pile, making sure to leave space for a discard pile. Cards discarded throughout the game will be placed here face down. As this is a game in which players will be taking turns almost simultaneously, there's no real first player, so there's no real concern in deciding who will be the first player for this game. In Paper Tales, players will be recruiting and deploying units to their kingdom, waging war with those units, constructing and upgrading buildings, as well as slowly watching as their units die out, making way for new units. The game takes place over a series of 4 turns, each of which consists of 6 phases that players will simultaneously act upon. At the end of the 4th turn, players will count up their legend points won from wars, as well as any on their buildings constructed in their kingdoms. The player with the most legend points at the end of the game is the winner. Before we go over each of the phases, there's a few core concepts that I think it's important that we go over to further help you understand what's happening in each of the phases. First, let's talk about resources. Aside from gold as a resource, there's food, gems, and woods as indicated by these symbols. Some buildings and units produce varying amounts of these resources, and they're always shown by this orange background. These, however, unlike gold, are not tracked by any physical game piece. They are available to you, the player, as long as the cards which produce them are in play. Resources are required for constructing buildings and are used for the resolution of some card abilities. Next, let's talk about your kingdom. A player's kingdom is composed of units and buildings that they have in play in front of them. Each player has 4 spaces available for putting their units into play, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. Buildings that are constructed during the game are placed close to the units, and remaining buildings are kept aside and can be consulted at any time. Now that we've talked about units and buildings, let's quickly go over their anatomy. A unit is comprised of many different parts. First, here we have the unit's name, the number of copies of that particular card in the deck, and its deployment cost, all located at the top. Next, we have the unit's strength, indicated by the red shield. This is what the units will use to determine who wins wars. You will see some units, however, that have an asterisk next to their shield. The strength of these units can be increased or decreased depending on the situation. Under the strength, we have the abilities activation icon. This will tell you in what phase your unit's ability take effect. Next to that is the actual ability. So in the case of the commander as well as the Cerberus, both of their abilities take effect in phase 3. You can read here what the actual ability is. Lastly, for units, we have any resources that a unit produces. So in the case of the woodcutter, they produce 1 wood. Moving on to buildings. Buildings have 2 levels. Level 1 is the front side and is indicated by this symbol, whereas level 2 is the back side and is indicated by this symbol here. Level 2 buildings earn more legend points at the end of the game, as you can see here, and provide additional abilities. At the top of the card, we can see the building name, its level, and legend points it will earn you at the end of the game. We then have the level 1 construction cost for the building, as well as the level 2 construction cost. Some buildings give you resources or additional abilities in other phases of a turn, all of which will be explained in further detail later on, but work much like the units. It will tell you what phase they take place in and what the actual ability is. Now that we have a better understanding of units, buildings, resources, and your kingdom, let's now move on to Phase 1, the recruitment phase. In Phase 1, each player is dealt 5 unit cards from the draw pile. They each keep one of their choice for themselves and pass the remaining 4 to their neighbor. Out of these 4 new cards, players each keep one again from their hand and pass the remaining ones to their neighbor again. Players proceed this way until each of them has selected a new hand of 5 cards. The direction in which cards are passed changes depending on each of the 4 game turns. To the left on turns 1 and 3, to the right on turns 2 and 4. If you have a hard time remembering, don't worry, you can just look at the score track for a handy reminder. At the end of the phase, each player adds any card kept from a previous turn to their hand. This, of course, is skipped on turn 1. If the draw pile is ever exhausted, shuffle the discard pile to form a new draw pile. After recruiting units in Phase 1, you'll then get a chance to deploy them in Phase 2, the deployment phase. In this phase, each player selects units from their hand they want to put into play in their kingdom, remembering you have 4 spots, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Among the ones they do not want to play, they are allowed to keep a single unit and must discard the others. Players can keep their single card on their player aid as a reminder. That card will come into play during the next recruitment phase. Players will simultaneously place their units that they want to play face down in their kingdom. Again, discarding any that weren't used and saving up to 1, which I will place here. If players lack space in their kingdoms, they can freely discard units already in play or move them from one spot to another. When all players are done playing, they simultaneously reveal the units they just played and pay their gold cost. So in this case, the only one that I have to pay for is the peddler, and he costs 1. That can be returned to the supply. If a player does not have enough gold, they have to discard any unit or units they are unable to pay for. This icon that can be found on the veteran as well as many others indicate an ability that is only triggered once and triggers as soon as the unit is revealed. Just a reminder that during this phase, players apply all abilities indicated by the Phase 2 symbol on units and buildings in their kingdom. In this case, we have Phase 6 and Phase 3, as well as Phase 4, no Phase 2 as of yet. In Phase 3, the Wars phase, players will be battling out with their neighbors using their frontline units only, and in some rare cases, their backline units as well, if their abilities dictate. To fight in wars, players each determine the strength of their kingdoms by summing up the shield strength of their units that they have in front. A value featuring asterisks, as you can see here with Cerberus, as mentioned before, means that this card has an ability that may modify its strength. So in the case of myself, the purple player, I have a total of 3 because Cerberus says that I get 3 strength instead of 2 if my kingdom produces at least 1 food, which at this point it does not. The player to my left, the yellow player, has a total of 6, and the player to my right has a total of 5. Each player then compares their kingdom strength with each of their neighbors. If a player has a higher or equal strength than one neighbor, they win a war. Each war won earns 3 legend points. In the case of a tie, both players win the war and earn 3 points. Just make sure to apply any and all abilities indicated by the Phase 3 symbol found on any units and or buildings, as in some case, this will modify your unit's overall strength total or net you additional legend points and gold. So if we were to play this out, like I said, I have a total of 3. I lose to both the left and the right because they have higher totals, so I score 0 points in this war. The player to the left, the yellow player, has a total strength of 6, who beats me, and the player to their left, which would be the green player, scoring them 6 points. The player to my right has a total of 5. They lose against this player here, but beat me, winning 1 war, earning them 3 legend points. With phase 3, the wars phase now complete, we're going to move into phase 4, the income phase. Here, each player earns 2 gold from the supply, plus any gold brought on by abilities indicated by the phase 4 symbol on units and buildings in their kingdom. So for instance, the peddler in this case would earn me an additional gold, and this will go in my supply, giving me a total of 5. During phase 5, players now get a chance to construct or upgrade buildings. The resources required for constructing or upgrading buildings are never spent. For players to be able to use them, they just need to be produced by units or buildings already in their kingdom. Each player can perform one single construction action out of the following 2: construct or upgrade. To construct a new building, the players can put into play any one of the 5 buildings that they received at the beginning of the game and that they did not construct yet. They can put it in on its level 1 or its level 2 side. In both cases, they have to pay for both the land cost and the resource cost of the building. Land cost is where, when a player constructs a new building, they must pay 2 gold for each building that they already possess in their kingdom. Your first construction will be free, since you don't already have any buildings. The second will cost you 2 gold, the third 4, and so on. As for resources, the player has to produce all resources corresponding to the building's construction cost, thanks to buildings and units already in play. So for instance, the town requires me to have 1 wood, which the peddler produces. Since I don't already have buildings in play, I could construct the town for free, which would put 1 wood and 1 food in my kingdom at all times, and since it's my first building, costs me nothing. However, if I wanted to construct the town straight to its level 2 side, I would first have to pay the land cost, which in this case would be 0 because I don't have any other buildings, and then be able to produce the resources for both the level 1 side and the level 2 side. So in this case, level 1 being 1 wood, level 2 being 2 wood, for a total of 3. So if I wanted to put the town directly into my kingdom on its level 2 side, I would have to have units and other buildings that are producing up to 3 wood, which in this case, I'm only producing 1. However, if you already have level 1 buildings in your kingdom from previous turn, you can instead choose to upgrade 1. So in this case, we'll say this is our setup for the second turn. This is everything that we have, and we want to upgrade our town. Upgrading a building doesn't have a land cost, as it's already been put into play. However, you still need to be able to produce the resources required. But in the case, only for the level 2 side, as we already produced the level 1 side resources. So for the town, if I wanted to upgrade to side 2, I would need 2 wood. Luckily, I produce 1 wood from my peddler, and my town actually produces 1 wood as well. So we can go ahead and flip that over and call it upgraded. Now with town level 2, I have 3 spots in my front row. It nets me 3 legend points at the end, as well as gives me 1 wood, 1 food, and 1 gemstone. I should note, in case you missed that there are buildings that when built or upgraded to their level 2 side, allow you another spot in your front line, making it a total of 3, as you can see here next to the name for the town. Also, there are 5 buildings, and you can only construct 1 per turn over 4 turns, so it will be impossible for you to get all 5 buildings. The last phase of the turn is phase 6, aging. In this phase, aged units die and all others grow older. All units that already have 1 or more age tokens on them die. They are discarded. 1 age token is then added to each unit that is still in play. I should note though that there are units such as the salamander that allow you to break that rule. For instance, you see here the phase 6 symbol. It reads, salamander only dies with 2 age tokens or more. So this unit would actually live longer than most others. Once the aging phase is over, the time token is moved one spot forward, and a new game turn begins. Just remember that in Phase 1, Recruitment, the direction in which you pass your cards changes. The game ends at the end of Turn 4. Players add to their scores the legend points showed on the buildings they have constructed. The player with the highest total of legend points is the winner. In the case of a tie between some players, the one with the most gold remaining wins. If there is still a tie, players share the victory. And there you have it. That is how you play Paper Tales. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or perhaps you'd like to suggest a game for my next How to Play video, feel free to leave it in the comments section below. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. Links for everything in the description also below. But until next time, as always, thanks for watching and happy gaming.